Hi, another art class from the MacRostie Art Studio. I'm Bruce. We're going to make some sculptured animals today. We're going to start first by cutting some pieces of clay to work with. You take part of your block of clay and you set it down and you use the wire that came in your kit. And the wire is what we use for cutting the clay. It slices right through very easily, so don't overdo it. And if you need help from your mom, go ahead and ask. You push down, pull through. You make some little blocks. You can start with that depending on how big of things you want to go. I'm going to make several. And it zips right through. So now we have some clay, and now we're going to go over to the table and set up and start making some sculptures. So now we're ready to make something, and I'm lucky enough to have some animals laying around. This is a rhinoceros. This is a panda bear, which can be any bear depending on what color you put on it. And here's an elephant that we made earlier. So this is some idea of what you want to try and make. You start with some clay and you squeeze off a little, and I'm going to make a ball out of the clay first. So everything's going to be built up from a ball. So the ball is the body, and I'm going to take a stick that you have, and I'm going to make a hole in the bottom of the body. Just like this, little hole, and that makes the clay dry much better, so when we put it in the kiln, there's much less chance of any tragic cracking accidents. So the body is there. Now we're going to do the legs, and each leg is going to be made up of another little ball of clay. Tear off pieces of clay about the same size, and roll them in your hands. Start off with a little round lumpy ball. Four legs, four balls. And then you can take a little bigger ball and roll that around too. That'll be the head. So we're going to go with an elephant on the first one, and then I'll make a couple others so you can see some other things that are possible. This one's a little small. We'll go with a little bit bigger one, so we have about the same size legs. Now, in this tin, I have wet clay. It's just clay that's been really wet, and it's called slip. And that's what we use for glue to put pieces together. So I'm going to take the body, I'm going to turn it over, smooth it out a little bit. I'm going to take the needle tool, which you also have, and carefully make some little lines on the front part of it, on the back part of it, the left and the right, where the legs will go. Once I've done that, then I take the slip and I push it in to the little cracks that I made, the little lines. That's the glue. So then I'll take the legs one at a time, and I'll just roll them a little so they're a little more oblong, a little more leg-like. The same thing with the needle tool. Make some lines. A little bit of slip on there. You don't need much. I like to get them all ready at the same time. Oh, that's too small. The little lines, a little more slip. Ready to go. Little lines. Couple lines and some slip. So the legs are ready to put on now. So I use a screwing method, so when I put it on there, you'll feel the clay kind of stick together, but you kind of work it in a little bit by turning it back and forth. Not a lot. You don't have to push real hard, because then the clay starts to, the adhesion comes. You take it, put it on, work it back and forth a little bit, work it in, kind of mold them in so they look like legs a little bit more. You do that all around. turn, 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 and it just starts to pull in. And the reason we're using the slip is because the clay shrinks when it dries. And if you don't firmly attach the legs, they'll shrink off the body and you'll have separate pieces. And once they're dry, there's really no way to put them back on before you put them in the kiln. So the 4 legs are on. Now you can use your fingers. Smooth the legs into the body so they look natural for clay. You decide which is going to be the head and which is going to be the back. This will be the head. So now I'm going to work on the head. So once again, I'll score the clay, and then I start making the head. It's an elephant head, so it needs a few things like a trunk. So if you take your fingers and pinch them, and you pull out some clay out of the front, just keep pulling a little clay smoothly, not just all at once. Work it slowly till you get a nice long trunk. Then you take your fingers and you squeeze in, like pinching, and your thumbs, and you work out the ears. The ears are what really define an elephant. Just keep squeezing them out farther and farther till you have some big ears. So to differentiate between the 2 ears, I just push down in the middle a little, and then round them off a little bit. So now the elephant has a trunk and ears, but it needs some eyes. By taking the back of your tool and pushing it up right along the trunk, you can make some eyes. So there we have that. Now you need to score the back of the elephant's head as well. Use the slip on both parts. And once again, kind of do a turning motion to get the head to stick on, and push firmly. Once it's on, then you can kind of fix it up a little. You might really need to retouch up the eye a little because I got my finger right there, but that's not a problem. It's clay, and you can keep working it over and over. You can turn the trunk any way you want. I think this will be a downturned trunk. If you put a little holes in the end of the trunk, that's just like a real elephant's nostrils. And you can also start doing something with the feet. I push the feet out because when you look at an elephant foot, it actually has toes. So by working out the edges here, you'll make him look like a real elephant with the toes. And last but not least, I'm going to add a tail onto the elephant, because elephants do have tails. A little slip again, take a little piece of clay, roll it into a narrow shape. And I think the end's a little thicker than the middle. So you leave the end fine and you roll it down and flatten it out a little. So this is the elephant tail. It's a little longer than I want, so you just take your needle tool and chop it right off. I'm going to take the needle tool and score the tail just a little bit up and down with the back of the elephant. Slip it. I'm going to take the tail and just put it on there and just kind of go up and down a little bit and then start working it in, because the tail is attached pretty finely, and then have it turn out a little bit so we have an actual elephant's tail. Now if you really want to get fancy, you take the needle tool or anything else you think of and you make a little texture on the elephant for his skin, because his skin is kind of rough. And if you do that sort of thing when you glaze it, the glaze will adhere to that differently and it'll give it a shiny area or something on that order. And there we have one interesting little elephant. So I think we'll make one more so you get a second idea of how we're doing this. I'm going to go with a bear this time, and here's a good example of a bear. This is the panda bear, but all bears are kind of the same shape. A little bit less clay. Squeeze the clay up. And if your clay's starting to get dry in the bag, put a little water in there with it. It'll help keep it soft. And make sure you keep the bag tightly closed and in a warm place, because the coldness actually gets the clay harder as well. So the bear's body is a little long, kind of a longer body. Not as big as the elephant. Gonna round off both ends because he's got kind of a rounded end in the back. The front, the legs kind of go down right in the middle. I'm going to use the stick again and open up the body a little bit because we want it to be able to dry out well. So that'll be the body. Now the legs. Same sort of legs, little stocky round legs. I can kind of tell you a secret in making animals too, because you can make animals that all look the same, and as long as you make their faces a little bit different and the ears, everybody will know exactly what it's supposed to be. I had to make something on request for somebody and I couldn't figure it out. Finally I got the ears and it just looked like what she wanted. So there's the legs again, here's the body. Same process with the scoring. Then you make the legs a little rounder. They're a little rounder and a little longer than like the elephant's legs. These boards you have to work on, they're very nice because the clay doesn't stick. If you try to do it on the kitchen table or somewhere, then the clay will end up sticking. So, little slip to score it with. Now the legs. We'll start with the back legs. This is going to be the front because it's a little more beefy and the bear has large shoulders. So I'm going to take the leg, take the two littler legs, a little bit of scoring, a little bit of slip. A little bit of scoring, a little bit of slip, quick twist. And once you get all four legs on, then you can kind of tune them up till they're just right and they fit the bear well. But until you have all four on, just get them on first and then kind of, it's clay. You can mold it any way you like and fix it up and make it look the way you want it to once it's all put together a little bit. So get that leg worked in, and I'm going to have him, as you see these legs, you can tell that he's kind of got feet sticking out and he's walking along. So I'm going to twist the feet out a little bit, give him a little turn. And it's your animal, and honestly you can make any kind of animal you can think of yourself. Okay, stands up all right. Smooth out the body a little bit. If there's any little cracks in it, you use your fingers and just wipe them nice and easy and they smooth right out. So now we need a bear head. The tail on this bear is just a little puff of clay, so we're going to do that on this one as well. And this is a panda, so I'm going to call this a panda as well. And you can make anything you like and call it whatever you like. It would work fine for dogs and cats, ghosts and goblins. So there's his little button tail. Now for the head, bear head. So he has a little bit longer neck, and his head kind of sticks forward from there. So work him up a little bit. Okay, by looking at him, he has a kind of a nose that sticks out, a snout they want to call it, kind of a long forehead, and he has two little ears that stick up so he can hear really, really well. So once I have the ears in there, we're going to start over again. That's one thing about clay. You just take another little chunk and go for it, roll it on around a little bit. Start with the snout again, get the snout coming out. Yeah, that's better. And I have a little more room to make the ears. You need a little space to make an ear. See that? That looks a little more like a bear's ear. And again, he needs a couple of eyes, not quite as big as the elephant's eyes. Comes out like that. I'm going to use the needle tool, give him a couple of nostrils, and draw some fangs in on the side of him because bears have big teeth. Once again, score the back, the body. Score the back of the head. Use a little slip, work it in, both places. And then it's the turning it on and pushing it in. And then kind of working it around. I think we have I think we can call it a bear now. So if you feel like it, you can use the needle tool and give him some fur at the same time. So don't make it too deep, but if you make a little bit of fur like that, then when you put glaze on it, it'll show a little bit of texture. So for MacRostie Art Studio and myself, have a good afternoon, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.